All right, welcome in. It is Tuesday, but more importantly, it's $5 Tuesday. Get that out of the way. $5 Tuesday at WagerTalk. Every handicapper will have a play up for $5. Whether it's college basketball, college football, there's bowl games today, early NFL. There's other sports going on that I don't really pay attention to, like I think NFL. Rob maybe has some NBA. So check that out. $5 Tuesday. Every handicapper's got something up for sale for just $5. But more importantly, Rob, it is our final show of I break the college basketball season into 3 seasons. I think there's 3 separate seasons in a college basketball season. And even more so true now that non-conference, I think, means a little bit less. For example, if you're in a low major and even most mid-major leagues, you've got to win that tournament in March to get to the NCAA tournament. If you're the big guys, the Syracuses of the world, the middling teams in your power conference, you've got unlimited opportunities to get big wins along the way. So the way I look at it, Rob, and I'm interested to see your take on this as well. I look at it as 3 seasons. There's non-conference, there's conference, and then there's the postseason. That's your conference tournament and whatever postseason tournament you end up in, the NCAA, the NIT, if they're going to do some crown thing this year, whatever that is. So for me, I didn't have a great non-conference, but that ends today. And I kind of will clean the slate the next 3-4 days. I look at what went wrong, what went right, and try to sort of retweak and redo my numbers to come out of the break, almost reset. So I'm interested to get your take on that. And if you sort of tweak anything on this 4-day break that we're going into.
Yeah, I actually break it into 4 separate seasons, Adam. Non-conference, conference tournaments, and then postseason tournaments. Just because I handicap conference tournaments and the postseason differently, you have great familiarity in conference tournaments. You have teams that already know they're going to the big dance. So, there's teams that are absolutely trying to climb the ladder and get into the big dance. And then when you get into the postseason, where you have all these non-conference crisscrosses with only one day to prepare, et cetera, it's a different handicap. So strictly on handicapping theory and way that I go about things, I break it into 4s. But yeah, this is the end of one of those right now. And, when we return, well, yeah, actually when we do return from Christmas break here, it will be the start of some have started already, but it will be the clean start of conference season. And that gets into a little bit of, I tell you the truth, conference season is almost 2 seasons as well. January, February are kind of different.
Yeah.
January, some things are a little looser. February, they're a little tighter. So lots of angles here for college basketball handicapping.
Yeah, Rob, there is crossover. Of course, we're going to come out of Christmas break, and there's going to still be teams playing maybe their final non-conference game, maybe final 2 non-conference games. Yet we've already had some of the bigger conferences that have moved toward like more extensive league play a couple of conference games. And we've got a Big East game, which will be our feature game tonight. So let's get into it. Villanova, we kind of talked about Villanova a couple days ago being a scrappy underdog option. And they went out and won that game in overtime against Wisconsin with a lot of the stuff we thought Villanova might be able to do well, sort of coming to fruition in that game. They're hitting the road again here. And Kevin Willard, a little bit of a homecoming. Before he was at Maryland, of course, he was at Seton Hall. And he's going to bring his new team back to Newark to take on his old team, who has, I would say, is thriving at this point. We talked about that the other day, too. Shaheen Holloway has a very Shaheen Holloway-esque team. It looks like a team that he can actually win with, team that sells out on the defensive end and really sort of buys in to what he wants to do. I watched this for so many years with him in the MAC. When he's got a team that buys in at the defensive end to play his style, they're almost always going to overachieve. And I think it's safe to say, Rob, that Seton Hall is very much overachieving to this point in the year. So Villanova Seton Hall, very interesting one at the Rock tonight, the Prudential Center in Newark, New Jersey. What do you see here?
Yeah, it's interesting. And the way you described it the other day, Adam, as a team that takes on the coach's personality. And Kevin Willard in a press conference prior to this game alluded to that. Obviously, these two guys know each other really well. Shaheen Holloway was quoted as saying he hopes that the crowd gives Kevin Willard a standing ovation for the 12, 13 years he put in at Seton Hall, his first time back, like you said. Both of these teams the other night, boy, they showed a lot of discipline. Let's just start with the Villanova side. They blew a huge lead against Wisconsin, and they were pushed to the limits. And then in overtime, they just came out and destroyed Wisconsin in overtime. So credit to Villanova for withstanding the late punch and coming back and winning that game, holding their ground, so to speak. Seton Hall, kind of the same thing. You watch that game down the stretch, and it was back and forth. You're at Providence. They're taking the lead. You're taking lead. They're taking lead. But in the end, it was Seton Hall last minute, 60 seconds that pulled away. So credit to both of these teams for going outside their home courts and withstanding late punches from the home side. Actually, Pfizer Forum in Milwaukee for the Wisconsin game, but still Wisconsin home crowd for the most part. They're different in a couple of ways here. Villanova's living off the 3. Seton Hall lives off the 2. But I think what's most impressive about Seton Hall, Adam, is that they're number 1 in the country in block and steal percentage, both. Defend the rim and take the ball away. That's a tough combination to excel at, to be number 1 out of all 365 teams that are bettable here in Division I. For Seton Hall, the backcourt does the job with deflections and getting steals, and the front court, obviously, with the blocks. So Villanova's in for a tough test here. I don't know that they can live off threes in this game. And I have to be honest, I have no desire whatsoever. As good as Villanova's been playing, I have no desire whatsoever to step in front of Seton Hall right now. No matter how they get it done, they seem to get it done. And every time they've been asked to step up in class, because they played a lot of teams they should have, been able to beat. But NC State's a tremendous offense. Hold them below their season average, only give up 74. USC is an excellent offense. Go out west, play them on a neutral and go 83, 81, 2 points. Shut down Kansas State's offense. You've talked about that a couple of times. And, of course, Providence, a really good offense under Kim English, shut them down. So I think Villanova's asset, that three-point shot, might be negated here tonight. And Seton Hall just has other ways to score, whether it be cheap points or half-court points. You watch Bud Clark play this season, and he actually is the extension of Holloway on this team. They shoot the free throws better if it's a close game late. I think I like Seton Hall here, -2.5.
Yeah, that's the side I would go with as well. So something that we talked about with Villanova's last game when they played Wisconsin was their guards sort of being the key defensively to them having a chance to win that game. That's one thing I've been most impressed with. I've kind of criticized the Villanova roster at times. Well, coming into the year, I felt like I didn't think that Willard went out and got the guys that were going to be like necessary to really make a splash in the Big East. But I'll backtrack a little bit for 2 reasons. One, I don't see anyone else that's much better in the Big East outside of like UConn and then St. John's, right? Like it's not a very good conference. And 2, he's such an upgrade at the coaching position from what Villanova had. And then you talk about like the scrappiness defensively, the fact that their guards can defend. The problem here, and why I'm gonna probably join you join you on Seton Hall. I don't know if either of us will get to the window with it, but Bud Clark is he's like the kind of guy that can beat good guard defense. He's another MAC guy that was on a team where he was basically the only option, and they would just drape guys on him, and it just did not matter. And he's doing that for Seton Hall as well. So I think he's going to be the key here for Seton Hall. If he can kind of generate offense and put the ball in the hoop, then for me, Seton Hall is the right side. But I'm going to proceed with caution because Villanova was a team I would have been fine fading, like maybe the first 3-4 weeks of the season. And I'm coming around on the Wildcats a little bit. I think Willard is got this team going in the right direction. So lean Seton Hall. Not sure if I'll get to the window with that one, but should be a great game to finish off the night, Rob. That is I think is as close to a standalone game as we're going to get today. I think it's the only game that starts at 7 p.m. tonight.
Yeah, lots of early stuff. And I'm going to just expand one more personnel note here, because I know you've talked about Duke Brennan a lot on this show. And that matchup tonight is difficult. I mean, the two Seton Hall guys, Payne and Hines, are way more active. You know, far better rim protectors. I just don't know what he's going to be able to do inside. So again, just the way we're looking at it here, at least I'm looking at it, is that Villanova, which point distribution is very, very heavy towards threes, love to shoot them. Gonna have to make some here, because I don't know what they're going to get on the interior unless it's fast break stuff. And I don't think you're getting too much fast break against Seton Hall.
Yeah, I see some people in the chat saying take the over. Like, I understand it's probably a little bit low from a numbers perspective, but man, this does not, the way this game plays out does not feel like a game I'd be super comfortable taking the over in. You're going to need some tough shot making, in my opinion, to get this one up and over the total. All right, Garth, let's go to, this is an interesting game. So Garth's thoughts on Lindenwood, Missouri State, under 146.5. Well, I will leave the total portion to you, but I do have an opinion on the side here. And so my first sort of thought was that this line is kind of low for Missouri State. Like that was my gut reaction, was, only 2.5. I guess maybe that's because Lindenwood has been far better than most anticipated they would be this season. Now, I think they might have. See, the thing is, and the reason I haven't bet anything yet in any of these games is personnel is going to be an issue for a lot of teams today. This is basically anyone that's still playing today is, likely at the end of, 3 games in 10 days. They last night I was joking with Rob off air. Sienna, the game, we got the parlay home, and Sienna was my parlay leg, and they showed up with 4 guys, or they showed up without 4 players, both bigs. They didn't have either of their bigs in that game, and somehow went out and covered. But to just get to show up and then learn that Riley Mulvey and Tasman Goodrick were not going to play. I mean, that's the type of stuff you might run into in just about every game today. There was one for Lindenwood that could be a factor. So I read Dontrez Williams is questionable. That would certainly hurt Lindenwood. He is one of the top scorers on the team, like 13.6 points per game. So I would absolutely want to know his status. But even if he was in there, there's 2 new teams in Conference USA this year, Rob. It's Missouri State and Delaware. And kind of coming into the season, I had Missouri State as the one that might overachieve a bit. So my number loves Missouri State. I was I think I'm at 7.5 here. It's only 3. But again, I just haven't played it yet because I'm so hesitant to get involved on what is this almost like a getaway day of sorts. But being as they're the home team, I've got to lean Missouri State's way. What do you think about that? And then if you want to go into the total right there.
Well, I would be scared to death to play under, just simply based on possession numbers in this game. And I know Missouri State is far more methodical. They're probably beneath methodical. But the other side is so racehorse paced. The possession numbers in Lindenwood games, and you have to throw a few of them in the garbage, right? Because a few of them are against teams that, there's no line on the game and they're easy wins. However, even in instances where they've played teams, let's just say in this class, they find their way to scoring points. Now, question would be, can they, for me, Missouri State should dictate most of the tempo, right? Because it's the home team, and as fast as Lindenwood is, Missouri State may be able to slow them down. Nothing frustrates a fast-paced team more than slowing it down. So if Missouri State can get on the boards and kind of slow things up a little bit, then that could be enough to keep you slightly under. But I don't know that there's enough wiggle room here, Adam. Honestly, you're only looking at a total in the mid-140s. And for what it's worth, as bad shooting as Missouri State has been from beyond the arc, as slow a pace as they want to play, they still find their way to the 70s in a lot of these games. And at 144.5, I think I'm looking at 145s now as I stare at the screen. At that number, you can get to this point pretty easily. So for me, I'd be afraid to play it under. I'm not going to talk Garth off of anything that he likes, but it's a no play for me. And as fast as Lindenwood plays, well, there's Bayou kind of reiterating what I'm saying here is that when you have this number of possessions, and actually the faster you play, the more fouling that occurs in these games, generally speaking, and you wind up on the line getting free points too. So if the game's anywhere near close at the end, you have to factor in for the final 60 seconds. That could become a foul fest. Like I say, I can't play it under because I would just be a nervous wreck the entire time.
So something I should have probably pointed out, and this also probably is baked into the number, and it's probably why my number is off of what the number is right now. Is Missouri State's been without Michael Osabansu the last 3 games. I would say he's probably he's probably the best all around player on that team. Probably does the most for them. But he's 6'4", 280, right? So without him, I would say that they've probably. I don't have it in front of me, but I would say they've probably played a little faster. Who's benefited from that in the stat column is Keith Pallick, 27 points against Oral Roberts, 23 against Xavier. So he is, he's sort of picked up the slack scoring wise. But and again, I'm not as much of a totals. I don't really bet totals. Maybe I should, because I feel like I come on here and give out decent total opinions, and then my plays lose, Rob. Maybe I should just become a totals guy. But Osabansu, without him on the floor, you got to think that maybe speeds Missouri State up a little bit. So yeah, I don't know if I'd want an under here. I think I'd lean toward the over. And even without him now, I talk about this with injuries. It's been 3 games. Like, I don't think that you should not be betting Missouri State because he's out at this point. Like, we know what they are with him out now, right? Like you have a 3-game sample. You've seen that Pallick has picked up the slack scoring wise. So I think Missouri State might be a little undervalued here. I don't know if this is a candidate for parlay leg for me, but we got time. I'll wait, see what else comes up.
Yeah, real quick, just to Garth, the comp game. The comp opponent here for Missouri State and it was at home, would be Arkansas State, kind of in the same style of Lindenwood. And that Arkansas State game got to 171. So it's a little bit dicey. It seems as if it's a couple of these, and they're a little sporadic because obviously Tulsa's a quicker paced team, but Xavier is a quicker paced team too. And that game stayed under. But the Arkansas State game, as far as where they stand as far as a team is concerned, strength-wise, schedule strength-wise, I think Arkansas State is probably closer to Lindenwood, and 171 in that game is far and above what we're looking at today at 144.5. So I'd be a little cautious, but again, I'm not here to talk anybody off, just to tell you what I think about it. And as we talk, Adam, clear across the board movement a couple of minutes ago. Some 145.5s out there. So, Garth, you have a shot to shop it and get yourself a far better number here. There's a 1-point gap between numbers across the board.
See some folks in the chat want to talk early tips, Rob. I will say this. Actually, both of these schools were actually like very, very accommodating to me. Very, very nice to me when I went down. Did both of them last year. I picked up the phone this morning, called Binghamton. I said, hey, I've still got eligibility left if you need a guy. I'm just kidding. I didn't do that, but I wonder if they would have thrown me on the bench today because it looks like they are going to be severely shorthanded against Army. I think that is the reason for the move. And, I kind of talk about, bad teams like Binghamton. I've talked about not thinking that they were very good on this show a couple of different times this year. And so, something I'll usually say, Rob, is there anyone on this roster that's worth 5 points to the number, right? And this is actually a scenario where I think there is. So the guys that are likely out, you're looking at Demetrius Lilly, 6'10" center. He came over from LaSalle. He's probably been Binghamton's best player this year. Another one that may be out, Jackson Benini. He's been out for, I think, 2 games at this point. Was awesome for Stonehill. Didn't do much for Binghamton last year, but the point is, could be more. That's the other thing we're learning. Like, could be more. I knew Mulvey might not play. Like, I got wind of him being potentially having an illness for Siena. I didn't know that 3 other guys weren't going to play. So if you've got a couple of guys, especially if it's illness related, and there's 2 out, by game time, that could be 4 guys. By game, and you talk about a game like this, Binghamton, they're 3-10. This isn't a league game. Like, it's like you got to worry that they show up and they've got 7 scholarship players playing, which, and I've been critical of Army this year, not really liking that this team coming into this season. Of course, Josh Scobin's now at Davidson. Jalen Rucker graduated. I didn't think they had anything from a talent standpoint. But one thing I will say about Army is they play extremely hard, and I'm impressed with the way that they play. I still think they lack talent, but then again, a lot of the teams they play, like anyone they play in the Patriot League, is going to lack talent. A lot of the teams that they've played on their non-conference schedule this year, Fairleigh Dickinson, Manhattan was without Sidnor. Like, I'm just going off of memory. Like, they've played a lot of games either against teams that are just not talented, or where they've been a big underdog where it's like, yeah, they'll go down 10, 15 points, but then they scrap and hang on and cover the number. I have zero interest, Rob, in laying 11.5 points, but I understand why it's gotten to where it has, because I don't want any part of a shorthanded Binghamton team either that got absolutely rolled by Mercyhurst, who's arguably a worse team than Army. So I think I'm out here, but I wanted to address this game because we'll probably talk about all of them. Anything for you, Binghamton Army?
I think if I were going to play, Adam, I would just isolate the Army team total here, 75.5. I'd probably play it over. Binghamton's a lousy defensive team to begin with, shorthanded on top of that. Army has come close to this or gone over this. As bad as they're offensively, about 50% of the time they find their way to at least 73. And now you're getting a team that probably that has little to no resistance on the defensive end. So Army shots likely fall here a little bit better than they have thus far this season. As you mentioned, they play hard. I would just let the point spread go, the full game total go, because you don't know what you're going to get out of Binghamton. They could throw up 57 or 58 today and your full game total goes down the drain. But I'd isolate the Army side. It seems the side with all the advantages here. 75.5 is not a difficult number to clear in this type of a situation at home. I would, if you're going to play, I would play that way. Army team total over 75.5.
Yeah, a couple guys in the chat I agree with. They are chucking threes at this point. And what was interesting is through the first 10 games of the year, they were one of the worst 3-point shooting teams in the country. But I have to imagine some of that had to do with playing teams like St. Thomas, Duke, Marist. They played a string of games for the first few games where they were against teams that could really defend, that were superior teams. That ever since they dipped down to playing teams, like we use the term weight class on this show, like that are more even teams, they have hit threes at a ridiculous rate for them, in my opinion. I think it jumped them 100 spots in 3-point shooting percentage nationally. So they're going to take a lot of them. If Binghamton's not going to defend it all, probably going to make quite a few of them too. So that would be probably the way I would attack this game. Would be
their distribution of points, Adam, is 7th highest in the nation where threes are concerned. So they score from the 3-point line more than, 358 other teams across the nation.
Yeah. So the game I took a really atrocious beat against Army earlier this year. I had Manhattan basically step back 3 to send it into OT. I had Manhattan. I think they were +1. So I obviously just would have won if that didn't go in. Army did not attempt a free throw in regulation. They didn't attempt a single free throw. So that's another thing too, when maybe speaks to the variance a little bit. They're not getting to the free throw line at all. They're also not going to score at the rim at all. There's no cheap. They're not going to get any cheap points. It's going to be Curry hitting threes or some offense that leads to a 3-point shot that they're going to make. I mean, maybe they'll get like a garbage bucket here and there, like a hustle play, but it's like they're getting very little at the rim, and they don't draw fouls. So that's one I probably won't be involved with. There is another early game, probably the more intriguing of the noon tips today, Rob. Doug Gottlieb has decided he's going to hang up the mic for a minute and focus on coaching. And I'm gonna go back to something I said earlier this year. I truly believe that Gottlieb underestimated the time commitment it was going to take to coach Division I college basketball. And he probably thought, well, I can do both. And I'm sure he was confident in his coaching abilities. And I got to be honest, like I'm pretty confident in his ability as a coach. I just think he got to season one in a rebuild with a bad Green Bay team and learned a lot from last season. Coming into this year, I've seen massive improvement, not only with Green Bay, with him as a coach. And I think now he probably was just like, you know what? Like, I am pretty good at this. My team is a lot better than people think. It's about to be conference play. Like, I need to just focus on my basketball team, not doing the radio gig. They've been undervalued, underrated all season. Another fantastic result for them last time out. I'm not betting against Green Bay right now, especially not with a Campbell team that can't shoot, because Green Bay mostly plays zone. They're going to force you to shoot to beat them. So I would lean toward Green Bay plus the points here. I'm probably one of the only ones out there that's a little bit of a Gottlieb guy. I'm going to call myself a Doug. Brian Power would be furious if he was still on the show. I don't think he can stand Gottlieb. I like him. I think he's undervalued. I think his team's undervalued. So Green Bay plus the points would be the way I would look there.
Yeah, I don't know that I can argue. Obviously, the early market argues because they've come to the side of Campbell with a pretty solid rush here, 2.5 all the way to 4.5. So, I don't know what the attraction to Campbell is in this particular instance. I do think that, and I did see that press conference the other night after the victory for UWGB. I think that I mentioned it yesterday, but when he said that he's just going to devote his time to coaching now, which you already mentioned, I think it gives the team a lift as well, Adam. The team probably feeds off of that, knowing that he's going to be around, and they've played better basketball. It's probably a tough little scheduling spot, right? Campbell, not the most likely road trip for a team from Green Bay. 12 o'clock start. Early for them. I believe they're central time zone, so it's like an 11 a.m. tip. Maybe first half, I could see Campbell getting the jump on Green Bay, but they showed some fight the other night, and I wouldn't doubt that the second 20, if they're down, they come back and push back. Statistically, a lot of the things Campbell doesn't do well, Green Bay can probably capitalize on, and vice versa. It works both ways. So when I went through it, it kind of came up as a somewhat of a push as far as matchups are concerned. Like, this team can do this against them, but that team can do that against them. I found no real advantage for either side. And in that case, taking 4.5 could be well worth it. You worry about the end of game, of course. Sometimes separation's created and you have a dog winner the entire way and you end up losing by 5 or 6 on the free throw line. But that aside, I would think that Green Bay plus points would be more attractive to me than laying it with Campbell.
Yeah, I mean, there's a large inflatable camel very close to the court at this arena. So that's one thing that you have to worry about. The other thing, though, probably more actionable, pertinent thing that you would have to worry about with Green Bay is CJ O'Hara barely played last game. He is 12.9 points per game. He's played in every game this year, is one of the better scorers on this team. So goes back to like the general sort of thought today being, got to worry about if there was ever a time where it was like a guy was a little nicked up or a guy's not feeling well, they're straight up just not going to play in a game like this. This is not a conference game. I'm sure it's a game both teams would love to have, especially Green Bay, who probably feels like they let one go against Wright State, game they had won a couple weeks ago. And it's like, I think for Doug and for Green Bay, like, every win is important, but like, they're straight up not going to if a guy is nursing any sort of injury, he's not playing today. Like that's just across the board. Any game, no one's going to play hurt, with the exception of maybe Nova Seton Hall because it's a conference game. Okay, so it's like, that would be my only concern is they get the win over UC Santa Barbara. Do they show up? Do guys, like, this is the other thing, Rob, because they're on the road, do guys even travel, right? Like sometimes, like, I think Siena left a couple of those guys home yesterday. I keep using that as an example. So, like, maybe the under here, because Campbell's going to have a tough time scoring on Green Bay. But if Green Bay shows up without a couple of their scorers, the total in this one right now, 147 is awfully high. Like, it feels high, right? Like, you could still have a game in the high 60s, low 70s and get under that total. So I think I might like the under in that one too.
Yeah, and real quick, O'Hara's minutes were cut short last game, only 20 minutes in that win against Santa Barbara. They found a way to get it done. But when you're talking about guys, as you mentioned, Adam, that are important, he plays the second highest percentage of minutes on the team. A guy that they run things through. So it'll be interesting. Sometimes if a guy, mid-game has to leave for injury purposes, you can carry him for a certain amount of minutes, but for a full 40, we'll see. Still think Wisconsin Green Bay gets a little bit of boost from that win and from their coach saying he's going to devote his time solely to them.
Yeah, it could only be Green Bay on the side for me, for sure. All right, we'll stay early for now. This is it's surprising to me, I suppose, because like a lot of when I do my numbers, what tends to show like the most value on a daily basis is these huge 30+ point spreads. And I never really play them, but I'm kicking myself because if I was just taking these points with like after the market moves the game with these obnoxiously big favorites this year or fading them. So I'm gonna move into the Bellarmine Kentucky game right now, which is a 1:00 game. Yesterday there was a whole bunch of them that covered. Maryland Eastern Shore covered. Jacksonville covered right at the end. I'm just going off memory. There was a whole bunch. The only one that didn't cover that showed value was like, I think, New Jersey Institute of Technology. The point is, you've got a Kentucky team that just got their big time win over St. John's over the weekend. Opened 32.5, I think up to like 36. I mean, Bellarmine is not like totally incapable. Winning a game by 40 is tough, right? Like there are ways where Kentucky blows them out and wins by 30 and doesn't come close to covering. So my numbers like Bellarmine, this is a daily occurrence for me pretty much. I don't really get to the window with these. I'm kind of kicking myself for not, because I feel like I've left winners on the table. So talk to me a little bit about if you see the same sort of thing with some of these bigger spreads and if you have any angle into Bellarmine, Kentucky.
Well, the problem with not wanting to go to the window with any conviction here is the start time, right? I mean, 1:00, 2 days before Christmas. How much do we care about being out here? But I'm going to say this from a fundamental aspect for Kentucky. This should be like a field day scoring wise. Like this is like, we're not having 6 periods or 7 periods at school today. We're just going to go outside and we're going to play games all day long. Because for Kentucky, when you look at their schedule, Adam, for their last 5 games, Gonzaga, top tier talent in NCAA basketball, Indiana, St. John's, North Carolina with the bigs at the rim. They've gone through 4 really, really good defensive basketball teams, and now you get Bellarmine, which really can't play defense whatsoever. So and I speak to this all the time, that offensive guys want to pad their stats. I can see Kentucky going out there and rattling off 95 plus whatever and not really caring as much on the defensive end because, to your point, they exerted all their energy beating Indiana and St. John's in the last 2, and especially St. John's because those games were a week apart. But the St. John's game took a lot of focus, a lot of energy. To me, I kind of agree with the total move here. I see Kentucky just doing whatever they want offensively and having fun doing it. And I don't see them caring as much on the defensive end. Something in the vicinity of, 99 to 65 gets the job done for you here rather easily. And it almost seems like this total probably will move a little bit more in my mind, because I think Kentucky's going to get theirs, and they won't mind giving up a few to Bellarmine for sure. So I think over is the right play in that game.
Couple good points here from our folks in the chat, which is a daily occurrence on the show. We have a very intelligent chat. They're always making good points. First one, Garth points out, and Garth is a Kentucky native, so he knows his Kentucky basketball. Bellarmine, of course, in Louisville. I mean, I don't think there's a hatred like there is with Kentucky Louisville, but Bellarmine is in Louisville, and of course, like you would have to think much bigger deal for Bellarmine than Kentucky, right? Like, this is probably pretty exciting for the kids at Bellarmine to go get to play at Rupp. Like, they're definitely going to be up for this game, because that's just cool. When you play, for Bellarmine, like, that's probably a highlight of your season, getting to go and play against nationally ranked Kentucky, or like a really good Kentucky team at Rupp Arena. Second, Bayou makes a good point. You probably barely see Jaden Quinton's here. He makes his season Kentucky debut over the weekend, but he came off the bench. I think he only played 18 minutes in the game. He was effective, 10 points, 8 boards. It was a very efficient 18 minutes for him. But you would be surprised if he's out there for more than like 10, 15 minutes today. Just absolutely no reason to push him, potentially get him hurt in this game, especially when you have a long layoff coming up and you open your conference season with Bama. I know it's a ways away, but that will be Kentucky's next game. So again, I mean, if Bellarmine can execute at all through 40 minutes, which I think they probably can, I think this is closer to a 30-point final than a 40-point final. And if you're getting 36.5, I feel like you have a reasonable chance to cash that bet. So not sure I'll make it to the window again. I haven't really played many of these big 30-point dogs, but Bellarmine hung around with Notre Dame. That was, of course, before Burton was hurt back in early November. They hung around with Murray State, which is a very good Murray State team, and actually pretty impressive win for them last time out. I know Chattanooga's pretty banged up this year, but that was a nice win for Bellarmine to beat what many thought was going to be the SoCon champs this year, though injuries have made that not possible, but still a nice win at home. All right, let's go to it. There's a couple more big spreads today, but there is a couple big spreads, Rob, where I'm actually leaning toward the favorite a little bit. Now, this one this was not the one I had in mind, but Doug brings up, do you expect a letdown off St. Oh, okay. So I misread that. That was a question that pertained to the Bellarmine game. I'm going to go to the favorite that I think probably smashes today, because I wanted to make the segue. Like, there's one big favorite that I think is probably in a good spot to just run a team out, and that's the UCLA Bruins. And this may actually be my parlay leg, but UCLA, probably one of their better offensive showings last time out against Cal Poly. Now, you could say, well, it's Cal Poly. They're going to run. They're going to let you do that offensively. But I also think it showed maybe it showed Cronin a little bit, like how he's supposed to let this UCLA team play. You and I have talked on this show, Rob, quite a bit about them really not getting the full Donovan Dent experience, right? Not the guy that we thought, or that we saw for a couple of years, basically just take over games at New Mexico. And then last time out, really the last 2 times out, they put up 90 against Arizona State, but last time out, 108 against Cal Poly. And I think maybe Cronin saw, like, hey, like, this is what my offense is capable of, especially if I'm playing an inferior team. Rob, I think they're going to drop 100 on UC Riverside today. And because of that, I think they probably cover this number, which got bet down. And I can't really understand why. So I would lay it with UCLA here. I have this number. I make this number close to 30, and it's rare that I ever show value on these like huge favorites. So strong lean toward the Bruins for me.
Yeah, and probably there's a couple of reasons here. Let me just speak on the positives for UCLA, which you started there, Adam. Last time we were on, we talked about Tyler Bilodeau and his offensive prowess for this team. We were looking for Mick Cronin to allow somebody or some bodies to step up and help him offensively. That guy was Sky Clark last game. Showed that There's as much offensive game to him as anybody on that team. I think Dent was still a facilitator in that one, had double-digit assists in that game. And so it looks to me like they've got the scoring angle somewhat figured out. Like their offense now is becoming a little more diverse. And these guys are bucket getters on UCLA, those three in particular. So they've got that covered. The other thing I'll say is in watching Sky Clark in the post-game interview the other night after he dropped 30 on that team, he talked about first half just not really paying attention or somewhat not respecting Cal Poly's ability to run and hit three-pointers. And in the second half, Cronin got on them a little bit, and that second half started and the blowout immediately started to occur. The defense tightened up. The offense kept rolling, which it's going to do against Cal Poly anyway. And the fact that Poly got to 87, there's a lot of late points scored there in that game by Cal Poly. But I think UCLA showed in that brief, 10, 11 minutes where they separated an extended margin. I think they showed that on the defensive side, this could still be a Mick Cronin type team. I know he's moaned a little bit about their defensive ability, but when you start putting together an offense that's ascending and a defense that looks like they can take on the personality of their head coach, what he wants, that's what you need to cover these big numbers. You need to score and you need to defend. And UCLA, to me, just in wrapping that up, off of that last game, I think you can see signs of both. It's still an in-state school. UCLA, Mick Cronin, I don't think he's a coach, long storied career here, to let off the gas pedal with his team. I think he's going to push this team in this game. So, yeah, it could be a disinterest spot. I get it. But I don't think Cronin's going to let them. I think Cronin wants to see the improvement continue with UCLA. So, 100 and some odd, 198 points scored in their last two games. Looking pretty good offensively.
Yeah, I think this will be. We've updated the system here at WagerTalk. It's still a little bit confusing. So normally I can kind of quickly put in plays while I'm on the show if I really like something, which I'm trying to do right now, and I'm not sure if it's working or not. So anyway, it looks like there's still 23 and a half, 24 out there for this, and that is at worst going to be my parlay leg. I may add it when we get off the show, but I really think that they didn't cover that Cal Poly game despite scoring over 100 points. The other thing about Cronin is he's never going to let you off the hook and be like, oh, we played good. He's going to come in and be like, well, we just don't give a shit about defense apparently, right? Even though we just scored 100 points. So I expect he'll demand a little bit better defensive effort, and I just don't think I don't think Riverside can do much to sort of take UCLA out of what they want to do. So I was surprised this got sort of bet down. Again, you always got to worry about someone missing, illness, what have you. But this is the scenario where you could probably take a player off that UCLA roster and it probably doesn't matter, right? They're just they could roll. We've seen this a couple times in these types of spots where they show up, maybe a starter's out. It happened to you the other day with NC State in a very similar game. And they drop 110, no problem, 1 by 30. Kind of think that's what's going on here. So I'll take UCLA. We'll call it minus 20. We'll call it minus 24 for the parlay. All right, it is 10:45. Rob, do you have an idea of what you want to use for the parlay at this point?
Yeah, I have a really good idea of what I want to use. And again, last night the Cal Northridge side dropped 100. Got us another team total home. So I'm just going to go back to situational handicapping with a team total. And we've talked a little bit about coaches and weird game starts, time starts, and whatnot. And will teams be prepared? I'm going to take the side that I guarantee Rick Pitino's team is prepared. I would almost guarantee Rick Pitino is not a guy who's going to – that loss to Kentucky is not going to sit well with Rick Pitino. Christmas break or not, it'll be a focused team in my estimation. Their team total for this one, Adam, is 87.5. And I just don't know that there's any way that St. John's doesn't rack up 88 points in this game through offense, through defense. Listen, they're not the absolute best offensive team in the country, but they're way better than they were last year. Last year, when they couldn't make a shot, I'd be a little more scared. Bit over 87.5, but I think they can turn Harvard over. They can score on the defensive end. They shoot it well enough. And one more time, that game the other day, just the 66-point effort, I look for a huge bounce back here. The disparity in defensive class between Kentucky and Harvard is immense to begin with, what you have for rim resistance as opposed to Kentucky. So I think St. John's is going to be my way to go here, Adam. It's a lot situational. It's a little bit fundamental because obviously St. John's has the better players on the floor, and they have the ability to score. I'm just trying to count up so I get an accurate number right here for you guys. But I see 6 instances already where St. John's has exceeded 87.5 points in situations. A couple of them somewhat like this. So I'm going to play that way. St. John's team total over 87.5.
I love that. And I want to answer Coach's question, and I'll tie it into this St. John's game. He says, why not just play UCLA team total over 86.5? And it's like, well, you can, but I feel like you if you're doing that, you don't benefit from Cronin potentially ripping his team to play more defense, which, as we know, Cronin is a defensive guy. Like his teams are at their best when they're thriving on the defensive end of the floor. So that's why I would lay it with UCLA. The reason I want to bring that up is, like, for whatever reason, St. John's, the numbers with St. John's have been so massively inflated. Like, I talked about this last week. I went to the DePaul St. John's game down at Carnesecca. They were laying like 20 points. Should have never been laying that many. Didn't cover. Game before that, laying 27 against Iona. Didn't cover, right? Like, Harvard still has some capable players. Hinton has been one of the best scorers in the Ivy since he showed up last year. He's probably a player that could easily play at a league that's higher than the Ivy League. Now, he doesn't have much help on this team. He still leads the team in scoring, 16.8 points per game. Like, that's the thing. Harvard coming into the year, if this was an early November game, I'd be all over Harvard plus the points, because I really thought that this was like the year Tommy Amaker maybe got his team back into the conversation in the Ivy. And who knows, maybe he does. The Ivy is down, but I just don't trust this Harvard team at all. They've been far less impressive than I thought they were going to be, but they still have enough scorers where 27, that's what we're looking at for a spread right now. 27 is an outrageous number. So, Rob, I agree with you. If I was going to find a way to play St. John's, which is what I would do in this game, coming off the Kentucky loss and coming off not really playing their best ball against DePaul, I'd have to find a way to play the Johnnies, but I just have no interest in laying 27 points. So that one, I'm with you. I like the team total. However, UCLA, I want to maybe benefit from their defense a little bit, so I'd rather lay the points there, just to answer that question, and agree with you on the Johnnies.
I'll throw something in real quick to to Coach 4040 or whoever our comment was just from. The St. John's play is a little bit, an extra handicapping angle in there is that I just don't think Rick Pitino is going to let off the gas in this game. On the other side of the coin, Mick Cronin potentially could let off the gas a little bit. He's had a 90-point performance, a 108. If they get up by, let's just say it's like 70-47 with 6 minutes left, maybe UCLA doesn't get there. I think St. John's will just keep going after this team. It's Pitino's nature. And not that it's not Mick Cronin's either, but I just think they're in different situational spots in their games today. But for me, definitely St. John's team total over. Harvard, boy, as far as at the rim is concerned, and I know, college player props is not something I ever look at. If they're even available at all, I don't know. But Ejiofor should have such a game underneath. The advantage there is massive. You would expect him to probably record some type of nice-looking double-double.
All right, Rob, I am messing around with the new back end, which listen, I'm not a big fan of change. So I'm going to complain about you. If you change something on me, like it's going to be a default complaint. I just don't like when things get updated, when things change, I get used to something. So while I'm messing around with this for a second, can you kick us off on there's still a pretty big matchup we didn't talk about.
Yeah.
So Central Florida, FAU. Looks like FAU is taking some money here. I guess I kind of agree with that. I got very lucky on Friday with FAU backdooring St. Mary's to cover 14.5. I believe we gave that out on the show. I think it was part of our parlay. A rare instance where I've gotten lucky this year in college basketball. So the Owls now go to in-state rival Central Florida. Talk to me about this one, UCF FAU. I believe this is an early tip as well.
Yeah, and real quick, let me just expand on your complaint because I share the same sentiment. For those who don't know, our process at WagerTalk of inputting our plays for clients or for a sale on a given day has been changed on us. And as with anything technical that's redone or changed over, there's always glitches in the system. And for those of us trying at this time of year where the sports are all overlapping and games are coming fast and furious, whether they be college football, college basketball, NFL, NBA. It's, you want to get these things out. And a lot of us are struggling with the new system to figure out how this even works. So that's what Adam's working on right now, real quick. And I will say this, the FAU Central Florida game, to me, I know that Florida Atlantic, for what it's worth, has decreased their overall adjusted tempo somewhat, but they're still a very fast offensive team, top 75 in average possession length. They still go fast on the offensive side. UCF still goes fast on the offensive side. They're 43rd in average possession length. It's the defensive side where they've kind of slowed other teams down, both in the above 340 in length of time that they make the other side hold the ball before they can shoot. Are they going to be able to do that today against two truly fast-paced teams against one another? I'm not so sure. I think that defensive average possession length increases as far as quickness of shots incredibly. I see the push toward the under in this game. I'll just get the current number for you guys here. Opens 164.5. It's down to 162.5. And I just don't agree with the line move here. I think a lot of that movement is based on the analytics that we see. And again, I'm just going to point this out for those who use KenPom or whatever analytics site you go to. There's quite a few of them out there that are very, very good. But this adjusted average tempo number doesn't necessarily tell the whole story. It's why I like looking at possession length by the offense, possession length by the defense. A lot of times when you have a you have a team that forces a team to take a long time to shoot, it's because they're predicated on zone. But here you're just going to get up and down basketball by both offenses. And I don't know that the defenses are going to be able to slow either one down. It's a game I'll probably push back against the line move on, thinking that this game, that the opening number was more in line than what the move is. And again, I just see the line movement based on the analytics of the whole situation, not necessarily the reality of the matchup that's going to occur here. So for me, Adam, it would probably be a look at the FAU UCF game over 162.5. And again, we talk about it all the time. These lines jump during our hour show here quite a bit. There's a lot of activity between 10 and 11 Eastern time with these numbers. And I'm seeing a couple of spots here where 161.5. So it could be pushed even further down a little bit, maybe give it another 15, 20 minutes and then go ahead and play. But I think this game's going over 162.
Yeah, I did finally figure out what I was trying to do. I think TurboTax might be easier to use than what I just had to do on the fly right there. But it looks like my play finally went through. So I'll recap that at the end. As far as this game is concerned, yeah, this is in Orlando, but it's in Disney. That's a good point because of obviously UCF is in Orlando, but I think this is would qualify as a neutral court. My note, what I jotted down this morning was FAU probably. This was just my scratch here, just going through the games. I said UCF should probably get what they want offensively. That was my only real takeaway. After this move, again, interesting, like numbers wise, 9.5 for FAU definitely showed value to me, but wasn't going to be, if I think UCF is going to, potentially have their way on the offensive end, that's not necessarily a bet I want to make. Now it's down to 7.5 some places. So I guess it doesn't surprise me that FAU took money at 9.5, which seemed like a very big number. I feel like I'm almost inclined to push back at it. I don't know if I will, but that's the way I would look, right? Like if you're going to now give me 7 with UCF, and I think that they're going to have, they're going to have chances to score, and they should be able to run their offense here. That's kind of, I guess, what I have to look at. Jose Perez says FAU team total over. Yeah, like neutral court game. It's at Disney. I'm assuming it's at the Milk House there, wherever they usually play that Wide World of Sports, wherever they usually play the tournament. Day before Christmas. Yeah, I could see this one maybe having some points, or maybe teams, Rob, not going to, in your shorts mode defensively. That might help the over get there. Yeah, interesting. It's an interesting matchup. I don't know if I'll get to the window with that game. I think we've talked about just about everything. We've got like 3 minutes left. The only thing I'll say about, okay, so there's 3 games we haven't talked about. Like, I'm just going to rapid fire off thoughts. Marymount got Vide back a couple games ago. He's like probably their best, most impactful player. They probably destroy Morgan State now that has moved a little bit. The only other, Grambling, Ohio State, I have zero opinion on. I'll leave that one for you. My number liked Bakersfield, but this Idaho team has intrigued me from the start of the season. So I don't know if I want to fade Idaho, even though my number leads toward Bakersfield. Do you have anything to add on those 3 real quick before we wrap it up?
Immediately, I had interest in just checking the number on Ohio State team total, and a lot of the reason why is the same as St. John's. They're off a very, very tough loss to North Carolina, and figure that they'll want to get back into the win column here. But the number, Adam, was 91.5 on their team total, a little too high for me. I would have hoped for something more like what I'm using in the St. John's in the parlay, something in that range of 87.5. Didn't get it, so didn't play. But I do think Ohio State, in all likelihood, will do whatever they want in that particular instance. Loyola Marymount, no real, I don't know. We'll see how it goes now that they're whole again. But that Stan Heath coach team, I've seen him a couple of times. I just come away so thoroughly unimpressed with that team offensively. It's like I don't know. It's almost like a traditional style team that doesn't do a heck of a lot well. It's very boring pace. It's a boring offense to watch. I don't know. I don't have a lot of good things to say about Loyola Marymount, but we'll see. Again, when the roster is whole, things can change. So, like I say, first look was towards Ohio State team total. Do with that what you want. I think it's too high for me. And the Morgan State Loyola Marymount game, I think I have to see a little bit more of them with a complete roster.
All right, so we are at the end of the show. We have wrapped the parlay up. I did go with UCLA minus 23.5 as a 3% client play. There's still 23.5s out there. FanDuel has one. Hard Rock has one. I'm just reading off the screen. But even if you have to get minus 24, that's fine. And I'll for our parlay's sake, I'll put 24 in at minus 110. So UCLA gonna lay the 24. That's my leg. Hopefully we get through that one. And then Rob brings us home with St. John's team total over 87.5. We've been on a nice little run here ever since we went to the 2-team parlay. After yesterday's win, back up 5.66 units on the parlays on the show. So nice little run on these. Hopefully we can get another one home today. Guys, we'll see you next week. I hope everyone has a great holiday. No games. If there was games on Christmas, I'd be here. But there's no games. So got a couple days off to regroup, sort of recalibrate. And the games resume on Sunday. Our show will resume on Monday. So we'll see you guys Monday for more Full Court Press. Have a great holiday, everyone. And we'll see you guys soon.